9.
Sorry, I mistook the time for 10:45. There is a quorum. Meeting has begun. Item 1 on the agenda, information papers issued since the last meeting. Members, please note that after the policy briefing panel meeting on the 24th of October, a total of 7 information papers have been issued, the details of which have been set out on item 1. Item 2, items for discussion at the next meeting. The next regular meeting was scheduled to be held on the 16th of December. As per the request of the administration, we shall convene a special meeting before the regular meeting to discuss the following matters of emergency. That is, the Qingyi Lantau Link investigation and detailed design, and also the proposed toll plans for road harbour crossings. Please note that the special meeting on the 16th of December will take place between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. If there is no other views, then we move on to item 3, review of the MTR fare adjustment mechanism. Now, we will invite the administration to come in. May I remind members, as per Rules of Procedures, Section 33A, if you have any direct or indirect pecuniary interest in relation to the items today, please disclose the nature of such interest before you speak. So please press the button if you would like to speak. I extend a warm welcome to the officials and representatives. Under Secretary, Deputy Secretary, please give us the introduction when you are ready. Thank you, Chair. Today, we have with us the representatives from the MTR Corporation Limited on the review of the MTR fare adjustment mechanism, or FAM. We will listen to members' views. Now, since the merger of the two railways in year 2007, after shareholders voting, the MTR FAM mechanism has become part of the contracts to replace the autonomy of fare enjoyed by the MTR-CL. Now, it has always been the FAM rate has been always lower than the change of the composite consumer price index and the median household income change. Now, since 2019, the fare of MTR services have not been increased since 2019, and last year it was even reduced downward for 1.85%. Since the 2013 and 2017 reviews, we are now entering into the latest round of review with a 3-month public consultation period. During the past 2 FAM review, we have introduced a number of measures to respond to the public's concerns over the FAM adjustments, as well as the link with the service of MTR-CL, including the profitability link arrangements, PRA, and permanent service performance link arrangements, SPA, and the affordability cap. So I will not go into details of those measures. We understand that members and the public still consider that there is room for improvement for FAM. So for this round of public consultation, we have set out the general directions of the public consultation in paragraph 16. That is how to more accurately reflect the profits enjoyed by MTR-CL of its property management projects, as well as how to reflect the 0.6% adjustments, how to strike a balance between the service of MTR-CL and other transport services mode. During the consultation, we will listen to stakeholders' views and continue discussion with the MTR-CL to come up with a practicable and feasible approach so as to alleviate the financial pressure on passengers, as well as ensuring that there is sufficient resources for the NTRCL to meet with the ever-increasing maintenance costs. Now, we will complete the review by the first quarter of 2023 and implement the measures next year when the FAM is implemented. Now we will listen carefully to members' views concerning the FAM review. Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Secretary. Now there are 13 members who have pressed the button. We have 75 minutes for this item, so 4 minutes each, and then depending on the time left, I will allow a second round. So we have Mr. Chen Hopfung, Mr. Michael Tian, Mr. Edward Lau, Mr. Kissen Yang, Mr. Michael Lok, Mr. Ben Chen, Mr. Andrew Lam, Bill Tang, Chen Xiu-hong, Ms. Jovi Chen, Mr. Gary Zhang, Mr. Tong Li-jie, and Mr. Zhao Xiu-chung. First, Mr. Chen Hopfung, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Now, the NTRCL, as the largest public transport service provider, it seems that the government is at a dilemma. The government is saying that the NTRCL is providing a quality service, and it is the major service provider, but also other transport service modes are very important as well. It seems that the government wants to ensure the public that the fare increase will not affect the public too much. However, it is a public service provider, so the fare increase would affect all public. Now, according to the formula, it doesn't take into account the profits enjoyed by the NTRCL, especially from its property. Now, there is a fare rebate system, or there is the profitability link system, but the adjustment is very little. When the profit is higher than $15 billion, a small portion would be set aside for concession or rebate. So this is too little. Now, we support adding the factor of profits from property into the formula. Now, on one hand, they are making profits from the property. On the other hand, they are saying that the service cost is higher, so they need a price hike. It shouldn't be the case because the government is subsidizing the NTRCL in terms of its property. The land is provided by the government. It should be reflected in the system, and I don't think that this profits from property should be calculated every year. It should be calculated over a longer period of time. Let's say if the NTRCL made a profit of $20 billion per year, then it will just set aside $3 billion for concession, but the other portion would be pocketed by the NTRCL. I believe that it should set aside a pool to stabilize the fare over a few years based on the profits earned for 1 year. I understand, I gather from the administration that the property profits would also be considered. So I would like to hear more details about this. Deputy Secretary. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Member, for your suggestion. We are now still in the consultation stage. We don't have a finalized plan yet. While listening to different sectors' views, Mr. Chen Hopfung's views is also a very popular view. That is, we should consider including the factor of a profit from property enjoyed by the NTRCL in the formula, so that the profits earned from property under management of the NTRCL would be reflected in the FAM system. Follow-up question. I wonder if you grasp fully my question. There is the 1.5% roll forward percentage. So can you also introduce this mechanism for the property profits factor? Let's say if more than $10 billion is earned on property this year, then the remaining portion should be rolled forward to the next year. We have to strike a balance. The formula has to be clear and transparent and easily understandable. We have to know how the public has to know how the adjustment rate is calculated. So Mr. Chen mentioned that the earnings from property shouldn't just be calculated for that year. It should be rolled forward as well. So please take note. Mr. Michael Tian. Thank you, Chair. The current mechanism, the public has concerns over the current mechanism on the viewpoints. Under the current mechanism, we consider the weighted average by between the change of inflation as well as the change in a payroll package, and then minus 1.6%. I always have a very difficult time explaining to my constituency why it is 1.6%. Why it isn't 1.8%, not 2 or 2% or 4%? Because the larger the percentage, the lower the fare would be. Well, I don't know how to explain to them. And some people will ask me, what does it have to do with them that transportation workers are getting a pay rise? It is very difficult to hire a transportation worker or a driver because of the pay package. But the public doesn't feel that it is related to the daily life. What they can feel, what they can appreciate is the figures, including inflation. So you would announce the inflation rate every month, so people would be looking at that figure solely. Now, in Hong Kong, over the past 20 years, the median household earning has increased by 3.7%, and inflation as well. So if the FAM system is linked with inflation, then the fare would be lower. Now, over the year, there has been upward and downward adjustments as well as rebates and concessions. Well, the inflation rate was 1.7% in the formula. So the government is urging the MTRCL to not increase the fare by lower than 1.7%. So it would be like a 30% concession of fare. So maybe to make it more easily understandable, you can increase the fare by half of the inflation rate. Then it would be equivalent to a 30% discount, and everybody would be happy. For years, where the MTRCL is making a profit from property sale and so on, then I can explain easily to my constituency. That is, when there is inflation, there would be a fare increase by half of the inflation, and then there should be a profit statement every year. If the profit is higher, then the fare hike should be lower. There should be a table showing people how much the MTRCL is earning. That would be more easily understandable and feasible. I believe the MTRCL has considered that as well.
So would you consider this very simple approach? So definitely that has to be linked to profit. If you just adopt an across-the-board approach by allowing them to increase fare, or that would have to be linked to its profitability. So which side would you go for? Yes, Ms. Wong. Well, if you look at what happened in the past, for the annual adjustment in the past, definitely inflation did play a very important part. That shows that over the years, in terms of operational cost rise, that has exceeded the fare hike. It shows that that has increased the burden on the part of the MTRCL. But then looking at the past few years, whether it's power charges and other operating costs, they have all gone up very significantly, and therefore we will be listening to your views. Next, Mr. Lau Kok Fan. Thank you, Chairman. The existing mechanism is relatively simple. Basically, we look at inflation and also operating costs. But then in the end, according to the formula, every year almost is always a fare hike, but never a reduction. That's the reason why there has been criticism. So with regard to the profitability-linked arrangement and also service performance-linked arrangement, well, that's to make MTRCL offer rebates and concessions And of course, that would be somewhat complicated because you don't know. Sometimes there would be concessions, and at other times that there wouldn't. So given the fact that you have already got this PLA and SPA arrangement, so under the existing mechanism in the future, well, inflation, operating cost, and then this profitability factor, and also the performance indicator. So where there are disruptions and so on, those would also be deducted from its fare hike. So that would be able to better reflect the overall profitability and also overall performance of MTRCL, and that would determine its fare level. That would be easier. Or else the so-called PLA and SPA, well, would just make them offer concessions and rebates and so on. I think that should only be reflected in the overall fare instead of just offering rebates and so on. And also under the existing mechanism, well, there are the rates that you should have adjusted. For example, 3.35, you should have adjusted that. But then for the cumulative increase, will you be scrapping that altogether? Or will you say that, well, after 2 years, if that has not been able to be put in place, then you will have to clear it. You will have to just scrap it. Or else people might be looking at a situation whereby there might be a very hefty increase by 10%, 20%, or even 30% if you just allow that to roll over. So will you just impose a cap on how long that should be allowed to be factored in? Ms. Wong. As to how to make the formula more simple, I think that's what we are trying to do because, well, given the views that we have received so far, well, sometimes people are at a loss as to when they are going to get a rebate, when they're going to get any concession, and so on. So we'll be incorporating your views, and then we will consider that very carefully. And also for the delayed or carried over or carried forward increase, that's a major subject that we have to deal with this time. But then, as you understand it, because the carried forward increase has been calculated in accordance with the existing formula. So they should have been able to adjust it that way. But then for some reasons, given we have imposed this cap, that's why they have not been able to increase it. And therefore, we have to abide by the contract. And therefore, we will have to look at how that should be dealt with. Yes, we have heard views that they'd like us to scrap it so that they would not be able to carry it forward and increase it later. But then there would be repercussions, and therefore we will have to be very careful. So we haven't really made a decision on that. But then we understand that we have to deal with that sooner or later. That's the reason why you will have to impose a duration limit. For example, if they try to catch up 5 years, 6 years, then you may be talking about a very exponential increase in terms of the fares. Well, Mr. Lau, they have several caps already. So they have this affordability cap, and therefore, inevitably, this will accumulate. Next, Mr. Yang Wing-kit, thank you, Chairman. First, members of the public have this impression that is they make a lot of profit, and they have disruptions all the time, and they also increase fares very significantly every time. Yes, you might say that people have many choices in terms of public transport mode, but then it's almost like an oligopoly or monopoly enjoyed by the MTRCL. So whatever situation we are in when it comes to our economy, they will still be able to enjoy a fare hike. Yes, we have this stagflation right now, and yet they are still able to increase fares given the formula, and therefore people just feel very aggrieved, and therefore you will have to do something about it. So there are several directions that you will have to look into. That is first service performance. You will have to do something about it. For example, for the Chin Wan line, it was out of service for a whole day. And should that be included in the formula so that they would have points deducted, or else if they have 10 disruptions 1 year, then next year they would not be permitted to increase fares. So through the through FAM, you will have to force MTRCL to attach more importance to its service performance. And everybody knows that it is making a lot of profit. For example, they have made $15 billion and they are only offering $300 million as rebates. That's just too little. And also, well, if you're making a profit of, let's say, $10 billion, then 2%, 3% will have to be taken out to share with your passengers instead of having to wait until you make $15 billion. So if you make $10 billion as profit, then you should not increase fare. That's as simple as that. And also, if our economy is not doing well, if it's in a negative growth situation, then you should not have been allowed to increase fares. For example, right now, we are in a deflation or stagnation situation, and therefore they should not be allowed to increase fares. And people simply do not have a choice when it comes to public transport. And many people are actually facing unemployment or underemployment, and still they have to pay more as fares. How can they feel right? And also for inflation, if it exceeds 4%, can you freeze your fares? So those are the ways that you can deal with it. Yes, we all know MTRCL is a company where the government is the major shareholder. So even if it's not able to increase fares, then it's just the government who will be suffering loss. But then in the end, you will have to benefit the public, and therefore the mechanism must include these three factors. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Yang, for your comments. We will have to continue to work hard to enhance our communication, because over the past 6 years, well, there have been 3 years where they did not increase fares at all. And then there was 1 year when they actually reduced fares. And of course, the views that you made will be considered. We will see how we can do even better. In fact, we have also offered concessions amounting to some $15 billion worth. And of course, when you talk about complexity and how that can be included in the formula in a very simple manner, then that's something that we will consider. Undersecretary, anything that you'd like to add? Mr. Yang, anything that you'd like to supplement? Next, Mr. Luk Chong Hong. Thank you, Chairman. Well, people may have a lot of views about the FAM. And they talk about, a cap on the fare hike and so on and so forth, or profitability, and also something else. I'd like to look at it from another perspective. How can people feel that it's reasonable to increase fare? And I think the most important part is about their performance. And the existing CEO and the different departments of the company, and also the directors of different departments, I think their performance would also be critical. Well, right now, the CEO and also the directors of different departments, when I look at their annual report, well, we're talking about some 25 to 35% as bonus by the end of every year. And mainly, they would consider the profitability of the company. So that's the problem. Okay, so the bonus is about the profitability of the company. And of course, they would try to make savings here and there, all right? They will try to cut costs everywhere, including staff's remuneration and so on, so that by the end of the year, they'd be able to have a more handsome bonus. So the reason why they have so many disruptions, that's because of the repair and maintenance situation. In fact, staff have been working very hard. Number one, they don't have enough resources. Second, they don't have enough manpower. And thirdly, there is this succession gaps. And also the company's profitability is detached from reality. All right, you are making $20,000 and yet you have to work overtime all the time. And there is no pay rise because of your experience and so on. In fact, MTRCL is an organization which requires a lot of expertise. And if there is no accumulation of experience or experienced people who are willing to work for them, then that would be a problem. And also, you try to outsource everything and you're actually finding cashier workers. So you're finding headhunters, and then they get cashier workers to take the place of permanent staff. But then MTRCL's repair and maintenance department is a very specialized department requiring a lot of expertise. And if you are not able to provide the best of service quality, then that would be a big problem. So the senior management of MTRCL is trying to get as much as possible in terms of bonuses. and yet they cannot be bothered about disruptions and so on. For example, for the recent derailing incident, if you are deducting the bonuses and also pay from the senior management, well, because those are not something taken for granted under the contract, or else they just try to make the figures look nice, and then that would be everything. So senior management will have to be held responsible for any disruptions, and they will have to have their bonuses deducted. That's one way to go for. Ms. Wong or Ms. Young? Yes, I understand your concerns and comments about us, but then I'd just like to make a few points in response. Well, please understand that in terms of asset renewal and also repair and maintenance, the MTLCL would absolutely be increasing its commitment on those areas. So we would not say that, service can be disrupted as long as we can make a profit. In fact, every year we are talking about over $4 billion of asset renewal and also repair and maintenance costs. But then in recent years, that has gone up to about $10 billion. And therefore, we cannot afford to spend less on that. So please rest assured, we will definitely be very committed to that. But then how come you're outsourcing everything, and how come you're getting casual workers to work on it? Well, everybody has left. For those experienced staff, they have all left. So if you're not trying to save cost, what is it? Well, MTLCL, yes, I'd like to respond to that. For talents and also the tight supply of manpower in the market is not just confined to the MTLCL. In fact, throughout the territory, we are facing this challenge. Well, on outsourcing and on casual workers, because the wastage rate is so high and it takes time to train up sufficient number of staff, and therefore we will have to get casual workers to take up the jobs. And also in terms of pay and so on, we have been reviewing our pay mechanism very positively, and we'd like to maintain our competitiveness. And we've been talking to our staff on a regular basis. We understand that for those working at the front line, in terms of the working environment, their pay and so on, they have a lot of views, and therefore we are prepared to listen. Next, Mr. Chen Hang-ben. Well, what kind of company is MTLCL? Well, the government owns 70% of its shares, is a public asset. Yes, it's operated on commercial principles, and yet they have a lot of advantages over the other competitors and so on, because they are given a lot of advantages. Because we have this MTLCL backbone, because we have MTLCL as the backbone of public transport, and therefore other modes of transport would become secondary. And they have also got this mechanism whereby even if they are not able to increase fares as they like, they would be able to have it rolled over and then increase it later. So I'd like to make a few points to discuss with you. All right, making a lot of profits, and still they like to increase fares. Well, during the past few years, there was one year when they made over $10 billion. Still, they increased our fare by over 1%. So public assets making a lot of money, and still they are asking us to pay more. So what kind of reasoning is that? And therefore we will have to follow the formula.
Now with the direct drive formula, it is so inflexible. So can we enhance it? If there is a profit for the year, then we should include an index in the formula. Now, we have the productivity factor, but it is very difficult to explain what this factor is because this is an economic concept. What if the MTLCL is making a huge profit that year? Then it would be very productive. So shouldn't there be more deduction in fare? Now, in terms of a rollover, we are now owing the MTLCL some 3% fare increase, and the 3% will continue to roll over. So when the economy is taking a turn for the better, we will have a major fare hike. This is not ideal. So of course, there can be a rollover system, but it should only last 1 year. If there cannot be a fare increase the next year, then it should be null and void. That would be the case because the economic situation is bad and there are many people unemployed and underemployed, and there is high inflation. So there shouldn't be a fare increase at all. the rollover period should only be 1 year rather than indefinitely. And also we know that for some rail lines, they are quite old. Now, every year the maintenance cost is $10 billion, but we don't know whether it will increase further. So that should be a maintenance fund maintained by the MTRCL rather than handing out bonuses arbitrarily. I declare interest. I'm also a minor shareholder of the MTRCL, but I think we have to have a maintenance and repair fund, because without the quality railway assets, there can be no other profit source of. There can be no other profits for the MTRCL. So this is more important than considering how much the company is earning every year. The MTRCL is the railway of the Hong Kong people. When you are making more than $10 billion a year, you shouldn't come ask for more money from the public. So I will first reply on the question about rolling over. I heard the member's suggestion that there should only be a rollover period of 1 year rather than indefinitely. This is a rather complicated question. We have to consider the financial implication for the MTRCL by changing the rollover period. So we have to be very careful. Now we defer to the MTRCL to answer the question on the annual maintenance and repair cost. Now recently, the maintenance cost per year is $10 billion. I believe that it will continue to be on the rise because, like Mr. Chen said, our assets has been aging. So we have to deploy more and more money to maintain the railway to keep up with the quality. Now, fare adjustment is for ensuring our steady income for the company so that we can maintain the assets. The major part of the dividends would be given to the government because it is the major shareholder. And then the government would use the dividends received for transport subsidy and so on. In terms of establishing a fund or making more promises and to ensure the public, we will study the feasibility. But it is very important for us to keep up with keep renewing our assets. We have spent some $6 billion on renewing our rolling stocks and the signaling system. Mr. Andrew Lam. Thank you, Chair. Now, from the public's perspective, it is very complicated and it doesn't help at all. Well, when I tap my octopus card, I wouldn't pay attention to what the basic fare is and what is the concession offered. So from the people's perspective, in terms of the fare adjustment rate this round, you have to tackle the structural issue. For example, more expensive fare for the east, more expensive fare for the west, and cheaper fare for the east, and then more expensive fare for shorter journeys than longer journeys. Now, I have 2 points that I would like to raise in relation to the FAM formula. Using the Composite Consumer Price Index and nominal wage index of a certain section to calculate the adjustment rate can reflect the economic situation to a certain extent. However, like other members have mentioned, we are experiencing stagflation. And hence, the changes in these indexes may not adequately reflect the affordability of the public. So I think you have to consider stagflation in future adjustments. And also, in terms of the concession model, realistically speaking, the dividends offered to the government would not be only deployed to the MTRCL, but the public transportation sector as a whole, because the government has to be fair. But you have to lets the public know clearly what kind of concessions are paid for by the government. For example, a Joyo card and the $2 scheme, these are concessions offered, or these are concessions offered by the government, not the MTRCL. So you should be clear to convey that message to the public. Now, the performance link arrangement, well, it is very confusing. I want a cheaper fare, but I also want better performance. So I think the performance link arrangement should be targeted at the management, rather than the fare. Thank you. Who will answer the question? Deputy Secretary. Chair, concerning the situation mentioned by the member, that is cheaper fare for the east and shorter journey than the west and longer journeys. Well, today we are trying to focus on the fare adjustment mechanism itself. In terms of the actual fare adjustment rate for the year, that will be dealt with under the FAM system for that year. Of course, we would consider how we can make the entire process more efficient, but I don't think this is something that we can address in this review exercise. In terms of making the concessions more clear, we definitely agree. We are often asked by the public what kind of concessions they are enjoying. So we would come up with ways to enhance our communication as well as improving the structure of the concessions. In terms of performance, we have heard Ms. Andrew Lam's point. We will think about how we can reflect the performance of the management in the formula. Thank you. Next, Mr. Bill Tang. Thank you, Chair. Fare hike of the MTR service compared with other transport services managed or operated by private companies are actually very extraordinary. It is a mechanism which ensures that there will be a fare hike every year. The next item will be about the application for fare increase by the Star Ferry. Well, that is out of necessity because they are losing money every year. For the MTRCL, however, every year they are making more than $10 billion for half of the time. For Star Ferry, they are recording a deficit every year. Because of the loss, they have to ask for a pay rise. Same for the franchise bus company. Now, for MTRCL, they would tell us that they are asking for a fare increase because of the mechanism. Well, that's not the point, is it? Because the other companies are asking for a fare increase because of the loss. The government can decide whether the application would be granted depending on the situation. For MTRCL, well, this is a sure win model. And also, the government is receiving dividends from the MTRCL as well. So to the public, it seems that it is, in effect, an automatic price hike mechanism, which would benefit the Treasury. Back to the core issue. Why is there a fare hike even when the company is making huge profit? So this is the third review of the FAM system. I think the element of profit should be accorded more attention. The past 5 years have been the most turbulent years for Hong Kong with black cloud violence and COVID-19. However, for the past 5 years, the average net profit for MTRCL was $9.6 billion per year. That is really amazing. Year 2019, black cloud violence close to $10 billion, and year 2020, $5 billion. Well, no other private corporations can achieve such a marvelous financial statements like the MTRCL. Shouldn't we be standing together with the people. Or I suggest that when the profit hits the $10 billion mark, there can be no fare hike because it is not necessary. And also, we should include a new factor into the formula. Say, for example, when the group is making $5 billion, there should be a 1% discount. Another $50 billion profit, then another percent of discount. What about a $9.9 billion profit? Well, then there should be a pro rata discount. So that would give the company a more incentive because with a fare decrease, the company may be making more profits for the year. We do encourage public transport services operators to make a profit because it would benefit the public. But shouldn't we link it with the adjustments in fare? Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Tang, for your suggestions. Like I said, we have heard a lot of views that we should include the profit elements in the adjustment formula. So we will consider the suggestion seriously to consider it. And we understand fully the public's concern over the fare hike of public transport services. Now we have the public transport fare subsidy scheme. I think that is PTFSS. So this year the expenditure on the PTFSS would be some $3 billion. Every year we are receiving some $5 billion in dividends from the MTRCL. We are not deploying the entire sum to the public transport fare subsidy scheme. However, we do want to subsidize the transport fare of the public. Thank you. So this is the first time we heard how the government is spending the dividends from the MTRCL. Thank you. Mr. Chen Xiu-hong. Chair, the MTRCL is a very unique entity. It is a public transport service operator, so there is a social responsibility to shoulder. However, it is also a listed company with the government being the major shareholder. After the review of the FAM system, there can only be very minor adjustments. We have to understand the reality. In paragraph 16, it says that in the course of review, there are 10 matters to be considered. One element is that despite the expectation of the public, the government has to operate under the commercial principle and has to be responsible to shareholders. The MTRCL also has to continually update and renew its railway assets. So in terms of any suggestions which would undermine these objectives, it would be very hard to accept. And also, the contract and the FAM carry legal effect. So for those suggestions which will not be passed by the extraordinary shareholders meeting, we can simply abandon them.
Thirdly, the administration will still consider a formula-based approach in considering any further review. In other words, anything that would significantly change that formula would not be the subject of discussion, and therefore what they can adjust would be very small in scope. And the answer is that in the end, they are only going to make very patchy adjustments. So MTRCL's profits mainly come from property development, and property development mainly comes from superstructure development of MTR stations. And therefore, in your review and in your consultation, it's about whether or not you can come up with a formula so that property development can be factored in, which will affect its fare. So my question for the administration is, well, I think many members have spoken about this direction. That is, well, you will have to consider whether or not under the present PLA, and every year, if the profit level reaches a certain level, then there can be substantial concession offered by the MTRCL, and that would also help to lower the fare hike. So what are the difficulties encountered by the administration, so much so that you find it difficult to give an undertaking right now? Well, we are still doing the consultation. We are still listening to views. including how the profit can be linked to that formula. So all the views will be taken on board and considered. And therefore, for the time being, we are not in a position to say that we have made a decision. All right, there is this general expectation that under the mechanism, and if you're not going to change that formula, and given the fact that it's a legally binding document, and therefore there isn't that much that you can change, and therefore the public's expectation is, well, I think Mr. Bill Tang also referred to that. All right, if you are making huge profits, and if the public are not able to share part of that profit, or if they can only share a very small part of it, then there would be a big gap between the public's expectation and the actual situation. Yes, it's okay for you to make profits, but then under the profit sharing mechanism, the public must be able to see that that would also be reflected in the fares, so that they would get a relief, so that would achieve a win-win situation for both. Well, in the end, the administration will still be subsidizing that. For example, you have the fare concession, and part of it will be paid for in the form of the reduction in dividends to the administration. So you're trying to regularize it, and you should also have a bigger room so that the fare subsidy can be substantially increased. I think that's the focus of attention. All right, your view has been taken on board. Next, Ms. Jovi Chen, thank you. Well, the FTU did a questionnaire survey last month, and we managed to receive 312 questionnaires online. So I'd like to share that with you. In fact, together with Mr. Luk Chung Hong and Mr. Bill Tang, we released the results. Some 70% of the respondents did not accept the fact that MTRCL will be increasing its fares in the near future. I think that gives, that brings us to that question. How come the MTRCL is making a lot of money every year and yet it is increasing fares? Well, when it comes to fare, if the service is better and if staff are getting better pay, then everybody will find it reasonable to see an increase in fares. But then is that the situation? If you look at this year's situation, we have permitted MTRCL to increase fares. In the end, they did not do it. And therefore, there must be something wrong with the FAM. And some respondents also hope that certain factors will be factored into the formula. Well, the most common point that they raised was about profitability, and some speakers have already mentioned that. Next is about inflation, and then is about their service performance. So these are the things that MTRCL should pay attention to. In the end, we hope that the mechanism can be linked to these factors. It does not have to be a single factor. And the most important thing is they are all factored in. We have 5 suggestions from the FTU. We hope that in the end, the formula can be improved on that basis. First, we know that, during the past year or so, we had the loosening of train doors and so on. So everybody is concerned about safety. In fact, after the Chin Wan Line incident, during peak hours, we tried to go there and do some observations. Very few people would prefer to take the Chin Wan Line. It shows that there is a crisis in terms of public confidence. And also the penalty. You would only be fined up to $25 million in one go if there is serious disruption. But then during the past 5 years, yes, it has been a rather turbulent period for Hong Kong, and yet you've still been able to make up to $10 billion profit a year. So it's a far cry from the actual economic situation, and you would not be able to adopt this approach whereby service would come first and then profitability would come second. So you will have to introduce a factor. We will have to cap the bonuses by the senior management. You would also have to audit the current fare mechanism. You would also have to reform the current situation as to how you calculate profits so that property proceeds can be used to balance or offset some of the fare increase. You would also have to increase staff pay. I hope that these suggestions can be taken back and considered, because we simply don't have time to allow the administration to respond to each of those. But then I'd like to ask for a simple figure. That's about outsourcing and also the use of substitute workers, because the cost that would be saved would also affect the service quality. because we have already seen that there are situations whereby you use a lot of outsourced or substitute workers, and in some cases, these substitute workers have been working permanently or for an extended period of time. So how bad is the situation? Well, I have to go back and find out. But then definitely there is no question of substitute workers taking up the larger share of our establishment. Definitely we have more permanent workers than casual workers. I'll have to go back and check before I can give you the details. Yes, we have also received the submission from the FTU. We'll go back and consider it. Any further follow-up? No. Next, Gary Zhang. Thank you, Chairman. With regard to FAM, I can see that they are not going to come up with any proposal for discussion, and therefore we can just express our views. Well, I'd like to look at the situation. Well, MTLCL has got this original intention. That is, they'd like to serve the community, and therefore they'd like to provide a reliable and efficient public transport service, and the fares should be reasonable. And in the end, you decided to adopt this commercial based approach, and that's to increase or improve its governance and also performance. Well, this model has its benefits because we can see that from different aspects the corporate efficiency when compared to other jurisdictions, they are doing a lot better. But then given that it's a commercial entity, it's also a listed company, and therefore there is this driving force that the management would attach more importance to fiscal performance than service performance. Well, there is no choice because you have adopted that approach. Then inevitably, as a listed company, you will have to publish annual reports, and then shareholders and the investing public would have this legitimate expectation. So this is inevitable. For example, some members talk about staffing and also repair and maintenance issues and so on. Before this meeting, I received some comments from MTLCL staff. They said that for those working at the front line, whether or not they running the trains or they are doing repair and maintenance, they are suffering from staff shortage, and it can be up to 10-20% vacancy in some departments. And it has been lasting for quite a while, and no improvement has been made. And the MTLCL said that that's because of the overriding environment, and it's hard to recruit staff and so on. But then sometimes it has to do with the promotional opportunities, because there are simply not enough senior positions for people to move up. And also, by allowing some of these vacancies to be there, then you might be able to save costs. And also, you have this mechanism whereby you will have to achieve a certain target in terms of cost saving every year. And in order to achieve that, you might just cut corners. So that would be reflected in service performance. When it comes to service performance, whether or not it's at the subcommittee on railway and this panel, very often there would be incidents, and whenever there are incidents, we would follow up because, well, overall speaking, what is your performance like? In fact, we have no idea. For example, every year there might be disruptions whereby there was an 8-minute delay. How many people have been affected? We simply do not have those figures. So I searched the Transport Department's website and also MTLCL's website, but then I couldn't find that. And if we are not able to have access to those indicators, then how can we monitor the performance of the MTLCL? So these are matters of principle, and I think this is a very good platform for us to bring those up. And then this fair adjustment mechanism, well, it's something that the entire community is concerned about every year. We'll be looking at this FAM and how it goes. I think this is the best tool whereby the listed company would be able to do a check on its health. So there would be checks and balances. And therefore, as I said, many frontline staff and also many members of the public are very concerned about this. I think this is a very good opportunity for us to review the situation so that you'd be able to look at the service performance and also affordability of the MTLCL service. Okay, can you make a quick response? Yes, thank you for your comment. As to how we should monitor the performance of MTLCL, other than the fact that we have government directors sitting on the board of MTLCL. On top of that, we also have different departments, whether it's the EMSD or the transport department. On a daily basis, they have very close communication with MTLCL on their service performance, on their repair and maintenance procedures, and so on. We do maintain very close liaison with them on those aspects. So we'll be monitoring their work in those areas. As to dissemination of information, if there are specific details that Mr. Zhang would like to get, then just let us know. We will see how we can provide those details to you. All right, thank you. Well, if members would like to ask questions, if they are in this complex, please come down as soon as possible, or else I'll draw a line there. I'll draw a line somewhere. Tony Chair, Chairman, I have to declare interest because I'm also a minority shareholder of MTLCL. Well, on FAM, the Fare Adjustment Mechanism, like many other members, I have this impression. That's mainly because for many major public modes of transport, the operators would often ask for fare adjustments or fare hikes. That's because of their operations, or they might say that if we do not increase fares, then we would be loss-making, or there is no way that we can continue to operate. In some cases, they even say that as an investment, there needs to be a reasonable return on their investment. And MTLCL, as a commercial operation, I think a reasonable return is okay and acceptable. But then as to what is meant by that, there are different interpretations. Well, people might think that if you want to increase fares, then in areas that you're making a lot of money, and if the profits are quite handsome already, then why are you still increasing fares? So that would be a somewhat outcome from the fare adjustment mechanism. And in the past, there had been a lot of repercussions in our community. And of course, you do have this formula, you do have this operating agreement. And for what happened in the past, to a certain extent, I respect the spirit of the contract. But then as to how it should be adjusted, well, we are of the view that on the profitability, it should be pegged or linked to the fare adjustment. It should have a stronger link. Well, right now, you talk about a certain ratio, and if you make a certain amount of profits, then a certain amount will have to be deducted or plowed back into a pool to be offered in the form of rebates and so on. But then, as some have said, this is far from adequate because you've made so much profit. So is that a reasonable return? Well, if you look at other public transport operators by reasonable return, well, if they are able to achieve that, then people will find it fair. So when you're making a lot of money already, well, as some have said, well, in terms of the percentage of increase, well, that should have been deducted by a certain degree. So can that be considered? Can the administration take up with the MTLCL?
冇表現方面。
In terms of service performance, disruptions and delays are the key factors in terms of calculating the fare adjustments. But performance is too narrow a scope. In terms of delay, you have to consider how long it takes for the resumption of normal service as well, and also escalators accidents and escalators incidents. You also have to consider that as part of a performance. So in terms of delay, if we use time of resumption of a normal service as a factor in calculating fare adjustments, some may worry that the MTRCR would be sloppy in terms of the repair and maintenance. But I'm not worried because I think the MTRCR is a very quality service provider compared with other places. We have been seeing constant improvements of the stations and the service as well, because we didn't used to have toilets in entire stations, and now we have. Some response from the administration. Yes, we would. We have taken Mr. Jie's points. We want to stabilize the fare. We don't want to implement a significant fare increase several years from now. Mr. Charles Siu-chung. Thank you, Chair. The MTRCL is one of the most important transportation service providers in Hong Kong. The government has a 75% share in the company. Every year, it is making a huge profit, close to $10 billion. Still, it is asking for a fare increase every year. This is extremely perplexing for the Hong Kong public. Under the fare adjustment mechanism, MTRCL is being put at a very safe position. If you look at the components, composite and consumer price index, always there would be an increase. Same for the nominal wage index. So the MTRCL will never lose. The only part where there may be a fare, which may contribute to a fare decrease, is the productivity factor. Well, if you look more closely, however, the productivity factor only takes into account the profits and earnings from operation of services. But if you take a look at the financial statement of the MTRCL, a significant chunk of the profits enjoyed by the MTRCL does not come from operation of train service. So riding on the opportunities of this round of the review, we have to address the problem. We must introduce the profit elements into the formula and into the productivity factor, so that the fare increase would be linked with the profit. Well, otherwise, the company would always ask for a price increase, no matter whether it is making a $10 billion or $20 billion profit per year, and it is not fair. Second issue on the dividends offered to the government. It shouldn't be the case that the government takes the dividends and does not spend it back on the government. Over the past 5 years, there has been a $40 billion dividend offered to the government. So can the government extend the scope of the transport subsidy? And also the dividends should be pooled into a fund for regularizing the public transport fare subsidy scheme, so that commuters with higher transportation costs will get more subsidy. Thank you. Deputy Secretary, or rather Ms. Jenny Yang. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Chow's point is taken. I would also like to respond to the other two members as well about the original aspiration of the FAM. The purpose is to stabilize the fare adjustment, so that under different economic situation, there would be flexibility, but we want the adjustments to be mild. Over the past 6 years, that is since the previous round of review, the FAM has played its role. Because of the cap system, for 4 years there was no fare adjustments, and for 1 year there was even a reduction. So the FAM has its uses. So of course we would review the composition this time. Well, I think the cap is just a scam. There is the affordability cap. However, next year you can still increase the fare. This is a very ridiculous system. If it is unaffordable by the public, you should simply cancel the increase. Mr. Chow, I think the administration has replied you on how to deal with the increase rolled over. They will consider it. Thank you. Mr. Yim Kong, thank you. The MTR is the most popular choice of transport. It is used by over 4 million of the population. Now, according to the administration, the fare adjustments should take into account the public's perception. Now, over the past 2 years, the fare has been frozen because of the epidemic. We understand that the MTRCL has to be held responsible to the shareholder. However, the 2019 COVID situation, the COVID-19 situation is a once-in-a-century incident. So we should consider cancelling all the rolled over increase. In the mainland, for example, over the past 2 years, for all logistics practitioners, they would their highway toll fee would be waived entirely. Well, like MTRCL, those are public transportation service operators. So besides considering the spirit of the contract, we should attach more importance to the social responsibility of the MTRCL. So I think the government has to consider, together with the MTRCL, the impact of the epidemic. We are still having a very serious epidemic. Now, for the West Rail Line, the fare is very high. Residents in the new territories are very dissatisfied with the high fare for the West Rail Line. So we shouldn't transfer all the burden to the users of the West Rail Line. So that should be a fair mechanism. So I think you should apply milder fare adjustments to the West Rail Line. Thank you. We will consider the members' views as well. In terms of the difference in fares of other railways and the West Rail Line, under this round of review, we are reviewing the entire FAM system rather than dealing with the difference in fares between different railway lines and between different stations and journeys. So we will, in the future, consider how to address the differences. Mr. Yim Kong, any follow-up question? No, I just hope that the administration can consider my first point as well. Next, Mr. Perry Yu. Thank you, Chair. The government has always adopted a policy of using railway as the backbone of public transport. Under that policy, MTRCL, as the service operator, showed a lot of expectations from the public. The public wants the MTRCL to show them more social responsibility. However, it is also a listed company. It has to be held accountable to the shareholders. In any event, the aspiration of the public for the MTRCL is that it can continue to provide railway services which is of high quality, safe and reliable with high efficiency. So the Hong Kong people has always been proud of our railway. However, the fare should be kept at a level which is affordable by the general public. So paragraph 16b mentions that under the FAM arrangements, the FAM was introduced after thorough studies. It was extensively discussed in the Legislative Council. The previous 2 rounds of reviews were also very extensively discussed as well. And also, the FAM must be approved through voting as the MTRCL's shareholders meeting, and then it would be legally binding. So with these in mind, is the formula adjustable? we want to change the formula, how can we change it? What is the procedure? Well, if we cannot change the formula, if we cannot touch it, then we may consider attaching conditions to it. Well, when the MTRCL is making huge profits, if the public wants to share the profits, and there are only two ways. First, buy the MTRCLs and stocks and earn dividends. The other way would be for the major shareholder of the company, that is the government, use the dividends earned on the public transport fare subsidy scheme and make it more extensive. So my question is whether there is sufficient commitments borne by the MTRCL. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Member, for your questions on whether the formula is can be amended. Every time when we receive public views, we would discuss it with the MTRCL on how to better respond to the public. Now, the formula is part and parcel to the operating agreement. Before changing the formula, we have to sit down with the MTRCL and carefully discuss it with them. I cannot answer you right now which part of the formula can be amended. In terms of whether the government can ensure that all dividends would be deployed back into the public transport fare subsidy scheme. Well, like we said, we don't have a policy to dedicate the entire sum of the dividends into the scheme. But let me give you some figures. For dividends received from the MTRCL, we would use it to alleviate the financial burden on commuters through other channels. Beside the public transport fare subsidy scheme, there are various discounts and concessions for that purpose. Ms. Yeung, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Yu, for your questions. We do keep an open mind when listening to members' views, so we will not give you a definite answer what can be done and what cannot be done. So since March, we have been reaching out to different stakeholders. Of course, we would consider people's expectation, our financial needs, and how we can make the change in a legal manner. So we will explore different options. Thank you. Next, Dr. Lo Wai-kwok. Thank you, Chair. Objectively speaking, the FAM arrangement has been reviewed on numerous occasions after it was implemented. The factors included in the formula are actually very reasonable. If you ask me, I cannot come up with any new factors which should be included in the formula. And also, this is a system where the fare can be adjusted upward or downward. There are people saying that it can only be increased, but it is not the case. For some years, the fare has been frozen, and year 2021, it was reduced by some 2%.
So today, the problem that we are facing is that, well, right now, the entire community is in hot waters. Well, because of the pandemic, many sectors have been adversely affected. I don't think I need to retell the stories of suffering. But then the mechanism is something that the MTRCL can work on. And indeed, both myself and my colleagues from the Business Alliance are of the view that if you'd like to prove yourself to be a corporation for the community, then you can actually offer, say, 20% off your fares. That's something that you can do. Yes, our economy has suffered a severe blow, and we are still not yet out of that app. So even if you take that as advertising costs, it would still be worthy of your while to do it. And you're also a part of the community, and therefore, if you'd like to become Hong Kong's railway, then you should have considered doing that. So for me, I don't think FAM could be significantly changed. But then the weighted factor can also be adjusted, and we can also do a more detailed analysis of that. First, on the PLA, the profitability-linked arrangement, to be fair, you have already preset a scale, and then at different profit levels, then the MTRCL would be sharing different amounts of that profit with the community or with the riding public. But then can that percentage be increased? Because right now it's a very low percentage. You're just talking about slightly more than 1%, right? So can you increase that moderately? So I think you should consider it. It's more pragmatic. It would be able to help. And other than coping with the operating costs, the public would be most concerned about safety and reliability. And as some have said, there were some recent incidents that have been very upsetting to the public, and therefore, well, risk management would be of critical importance, and the senior management will have to work on that. In fact, well, in these chambers, I've repeatedly discussed this with the engineering staff from the MTRCL, and they told me that they would be very sincere in making improvements. And there are also some issues which apparently the MTRCL has not been very serious in making improvements. In simple terms, the shorter haul journeys would be more expensive than the long haul journeys. So that is quite upsetting. So the current mechanism will simply not make them use the excess income for other purposes. I think you should try to make adjustments to those fares, and people will feel is more fair. In fact, railway plus property development have been a successful approach. Is a success story that many overseas jurisdictions are studying. And I think while providing reliable and safe public transport, you should also enable people to live very happily in their own homes. Ms. Young, what's your take? Well, we thank you for his comment. Okay, it's my turn, the last one to speak. In fact, 2 members have asked this. That's about the formula. Can that be changed? Well, I'm pleased to hear that both sides would be willing to look into it. And I hope that indeed it should be changed, or else what's the point of having this meeting at all? Well, the formula itself has some inherent problems if the economy is not doing well, but then because of structural problem in our community, if we are not able to recruit enough people, and if the pay is going up, you will have to increase fare, even though the economy is not doing well. Well, for the productivity factor, just think about it. If income does not go up, and yet if expenses continue to grow, then I will have to allow you to increase fare. Is that the case? So that's the inherent or structural problem with regard to the formula. I hope that you can really discuss that seriously. Yes, Deputy Secretary, as you confirmed just now. Well, for the dividends that the administration has received from MTRCL, so it's almost like a dedicated fund, and much of it has been put into the PTFSS. I don't dare to challenge you. But then, as many members have spoken, there is still a lot of room for improvement. The dividends should be used to plow back into that, so that for public transport system, some of the fare adjustments should have been offset by that dividend. It's not unreasonable to make that suggestion, because just imagine for other public modes of transport before MTRCL came into effect, they used to be the main operators, and they would be taking up the lion's share of the passenger traffic, and now MTRCL has come out and it is making huge profits, and now they are telling you that they have to increase fares. So whatever you make out of that should have been used in a community. So that's something that you genuinely have to consider. Okay. I think we have talked about the issue for many years. It's about the profitability of MTRCL. You should have included the property proceeds or profits into that formula. And for the dividends received by the government, should that be used as a dedicated fund to make sure that the entire public transport system would be more affordable, so that you can use it to offset any pressure to increase fares. And that would also help ease the pressure on the public in terms of affordability. And also there was this issue of carried forward fare hikes. So how are you going to resolve this problem? Because it's a never-ending problem if you don't do something about it. So that's my personal view. You will have to think about how that should be dealt with. All right, we have exceeded the time limit by 2 minutes. That's the scheduled time for discussion, so I'll have to wrap up our discussion here. We will have to move on to another item, as the next item is about Star Ferry fare hike, and I'm a non-executive director of Star Ferry, and therefore I'll ask the Deputy Chairman to take over to chair the meeting for me. Colleagues, we are on item 4. So application for fare increase by Star Ferry. Well, please refer to the paper provided by the administration and also the background paper prepared by the Secretariat. Let's invite the government's team and also Star Ferry's representatives to join us. And for those who would like to speak, please press the request to speak button in front of you. And I'd like to welcome the representative from the government and Star Ferry for coming. I understand that there is a presentation by the administration, so I'd like to give the floor to the administration, who will walk us through the PowerPoint. Yes, Deputy Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. As the Chair just said, we are now dealing with the fare increase application from the Star Ferry Company Limited. We are here to consult members, and I'm sure you would agree that Star Ferry is a very important symbol for Hong Kong, and they are is also part of our collective memory, and it's also a very important part of our public transport system. They've been offering public services at very low fares, but then because of the pandemic, the patronage has been seriously affected, and the proceeds have also been affected, and because of the non-fare box incomes drop, it has reached a situation whereby they have not been able to pay up their debts. And we have resorted to different ways to help them, including taking up the repair and maintenance work of pier, and also the rental rebate, and also we have also waived the vehicle license fees and so on, and also Central Pier number 7, and also the Central Terminal building, and also the Wan Chai Terminal, and also the Tsim Sha Tsui pier would have been given to Star Ferry, so that advertising revenue would also be used to cross-subsidize its operating costs, and also under the employment support scheme, some $40 million has been given to Star Ferry to subsidize its costs, and still it is running into difficulties. That's the reason why they are now proposing to increase fares in order to increase the fare for 2 routes, so that the rate of increase would be from $1.8 to $4.2 in order to align themselves with other public transport operators, and they would be using the $2 fare scheme instead of the present no fare for elders, so that elders would be able to spend $2 to use their services. We understand that Star Ferry would have an urgent need to increase fares in order to maintain its sustainability, but then we understand that this application is indeed nowhere that you can call it low, and therefore we hope that Well, we try to improve the financial situation of Star Ferry, and also we have to strike a balance between this and public's acceptability. In the long run, we have to adopt a three-pronged approach, so that for the fare level and also non-fare box revenue and also government subsidy, for example, repair and maintenance of piers and so on, something has to be done in order to improve its financial situation. Now, I'd like to defer to Mr. David Chow from the Star Ferry Company Limited to tell us more about this. Thank you. Yes, Star Ferry. Good morning, Chairman. My name is David Chow, General Manager from Star Ferry. I'd like to say that these are our considerations. But in the past, there was a drop of patronage by some 75%, is a record low now. But then, on the contrary, we are facing hiking, ever-increasing operating costs. The current fare level, when compared to other public transport operators, is about 60–70% lower. And even after the adjustment, it will still be somewhat lower by 20–30%. And therefore, we are one of the lowest public transport modes, or the cheapest transport mode. And over the past 3 years, we have made a loss of over $85 million. It's almost the cumulative profit for the past 30 years. And we have already got some $77 million debt, and we are still making a loss at $1 million a week. And the MTR-CL new line will be coming into service next year, and the economy is also very gloomy, and therefore the outlook is very clouded. Coming back to our revenue, well, ferry services is of course the backbone of our service, and of course there are also rental income from shops, and also marketing and advertising and other activities. They are also bringing in revenue. But then if you look at the situation, well, the other transport modes are more mature, and therefore our patronage has been affected over the past 20 years. It has dropped by some 75%. And Star Ferry has become a non-mainstream cross-harbour traffic, and it has taken up only less than 2% of the total patronage. And if you look at the past 3 years, because of the pandemic, where there are no visitors, so the patronage has also dropped by some 50%. And this year, because of the fifth wave of the epidemic, and also because of the commissioning of the SCL, this might have been the worst year for us. And over the past 3 years, there was a further drop by some 20% in terms of patronage. Well, we have been facing this problem of high operating costs. These have been affected by the average age of our team. And also, we do not have many young people joining our team, and that's the result. That's the reason why the cost has been going up. And also, it's hard to recruit experienced staff, and therefore maintenance costs have stood high. And also, fuel costs over the past year has also doubled, and therefore every time the operating cost is about $450. In other words, we are actually subsidizing every passenger by some $9. And the operating cost would also mean that there would also be a $2 finance route revenue.
In terms of revenue, the revenue over the past 2 years were at a record low. Compared with year 2018, the year 2021 revenue has dropped by 32%. That is 31 million Hong Kong dollars. And also operating costs continue to rise, resulting in a deficit. For the first 3 quarters this year, the pre-subsidy loss recorded $36 million. And for every week, we are making a loss of $1 million, and our negative equity stand at $77 million, and we are borrowing $72 million from the bank to maintain our service. We believe that there are still many challenges ahead, and we cannot be optimistic. The pandemic situation is still volatile, and it affects the willingness of people to travel, and also because of the closure of borders, we have a major drop of visitors number by more than half, and there is still no timeline for full resumption. Now, since the East Rail Line cross-harbour section has commenced service since middle this year, it has caused a 20% reduction of our patronage. We have conducted a study on whether the special helping measures provided by the government to outlying island ferry routes can extend to us to alleviate our pressure. However, because of the policy, it will not extend to us. According to the Transport Department's 2021 ferry survey, the Star Ferry's adherence rate stood at 100%. Between year 2019 and 21, the Transport Department only received an average of 14 complaints against us, accounting for less than 0.1% of complaints against public transport services. As regards safety, the number of incidents involving Star Ferry stood at 1.3 cases per year between the year 2019 and 21. Looking ahead, we want to continue to enhance our service. On environmental friendliness, we have signed an agreement with the Environmental Protection Departments to join the government-subsidized pilot scheme for electric ferries, which will be kick-started in Q4 this year. And also, we will upgrade our terminal gates, and also allow digital payment methods subject to financial sustainability. And also, we will strive to cooperate with more corporates in organizing events to surprise the public. And we will also expedite including working out with other public transport operators to provide interchange discounts to the public. And also, we will expedite the pier revitalization plan, including trade mix upgrade and further exploration with the government on the hardware improvements plan for the longer run, especially at the Tsim Sha Tsui pier, which is already 60 years old. Concerning this fare adjustment proposal, we propose an increase to $3.6 to $8.4 for the central Wan Chai route. On weekday, it is after the adjustment, it is still 20 to 40% cheaper than other mode of transport. Now, compared with 25 years ago, the average fare increase for the past 25 years since 1997 was less than 2% per annum. There was a 12-year hiatus when we didn't raise the fare. So this proposal for fare increase is really necessary. And also, for more than 30 years, we have been offering free service to 65 those above age 65. We have to suspend it because it will be replaced we propose it to be replaced by the $2 scheme because of the challenges we are facing. By replacing the free charge with the $2 scheme, we would be further supported to tide over this wave. However, like other public transport means, the $2 fare has to be paid for by the senior citizens. So out of necessity, we have to suspend the free service for elderly people above the age of 65, and we hope the public can understand it. The fare increase is expected to bring in an extra income of $12 to $19 million per annum, but still the operating deficits will exceed $37 million. So we have to take a multi-pronged approach to enhance our revenue stream by expediting pier revitalization and also holding different kinds of activities to bring in more footfall. And also, we hope that there will be further relaxation in the quarantine measures to attract more overseas visitors to come back and boost the economy and our patronage. Finally, some conclusions. The accumulated operating loss recently is close to a 30 years level. We are relying on that, and it is not sustainable for us. It is vital for us to find a sustainable operating plan and improve our revenue base. Next year, it will be our 125th year anniversary. We are a ferry of the Hong Kong people. I hope that the members will support our proposal to raise the fare so that we can maintain a quality cross-harbour ferry service, and we will continue to support tourism, cultural, educational, and other diversified collaborations to inject new ideas into our service. We will continue to make our service greener and further explore the introduction of green and sustainable initiatives. And also, we will introduce technology to help Hong Kong move towards a smart city. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chow. Now it is the question time. There are 9 members who have pressed the button. They are Mr. Michael Tian, Mr. Michael Luk, Chen Hock Fong, Ben Chen, Perry Yu, Dr. Lo Wai Kwok, Mr. Andrew Lam, Chao Xiu Chung, and Tony Jie. Now we expect to complete this item by 12:10, so time is tight. If it is agreeable with you, I would allow 3 minutes for each member, including questions and answers. So please keep your answers, keep your questions brief, and also the administration and the staff area can also give a brief answer, and then we can complete the item on time. Mr. Michael Tian. Thank you, Chair. Now, the roundtable in dealing with the application for fare increase by different public transport operators, we have several principles. First, who we are serving, and also are there alternatives, and also is there a group of people who really rely on this mode of transport. For staff ferry, the major targeted patients are family over the weekends. So it is not a major, not a mainstream mode of transport. Even if the government is letting the staff ferry to run the piers because of the distance from the urban areas, it is not very attractive. However, the staff ferry is very important icon for Hong Kong, like the Tsim Sha Tsui clock tower and so on. It is in our memory, so we have to support it. So it seems that it is a tourism attraction rather than a public mode of transport. There is no choice but to increase the fare. Now it is still 40% cheaper than cross Harbour bus services. However, there is still a group of people who need to commute between Central, Wan Chai, and Tsim Sha Tsui. So a monthly pass is very important. Now, after the increase, the lower deck price will be $5.2, so it would be at $228 per month. Now, the monthly pass is $160 per month. So compared with the $228 fee, it would be 30% cheaper. So that is like the MTR's monthly pass. In short, I do agree with your fare increase per trip because of the reasons I mentioned above, but you cannot touch the monthly pass. I will stop you at all costs if you want to increase the fare for the monthly pass. So can you give me a clear answer that you will not increase the monthly pass fare? Mr. Chow, thank you, Mr. Michael Tian, for your support. We would study your suggestions. Continue to study. So can you give me a clear answer? What is your position? Monthly pass does not account for a major portion of your revenue. Right, but we will take a holistic consideration. Well, it is really rare for you to have a supporter here. So if you do not treasure my support, if you want to touch the monthly pass, I will stop you at all costs. So we will continue to study it after the meeting. Thank you. Next, Mr. Michael Luk. 3 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Star Ferry has 2 functions. First, tourism. Half the patrons pre-COVID were visitors. Of course, now we don't have a lot of visitors. The other half is local passengers. So I think we have to deal with the 2 group of people differently. I believe even if you charge $10 per trip for visitors, they would still find it acceptable because it is a great place to take photos on, and also you can enjoy the sea breeze, and it is worth it. Now, for weekday, it is $6.4. For children, it is $3.8. I mean the upper deck, so it is a 40% increase. So I am worried that it may affect the patronage. Have you conducted a study whether by increasing the fare you would receive fewer patients. I'm just worried that you would be losing out in the end. Like the MTR-CL, if you use Octopus to cross the harbour, it would be some $9. So the fare difference is not that huge. And also you have to walk a distance after you alight the ferry as the pier. So did you conduct a study and whether you can treat visitors and local passengers differently? And also a monthly pass is also an issue, like Mr. Michael Tian said. And also what about a multiple journey discount? If you make frequent journeys for a month, you can enjoy a discount. And also for local passengers, you shouldn't increase the fare by 50%. That's too much. I know the situation is bad, but doubling the price is really unacceptable. Now the $2 scheme, it is not very attractive to the elderly people. For $2, they can choose MTR or franchise bus. But this boils down to the government's policy. Same for tram. So why don't you allow elderly people to enjoy a ferry or a tram ride for $1, and the remaining dollar would be subsidized by the government? These two modes of transport are very iconic. And also, the government actually does not have to spend so much on the subsidy compared with MTR and buses. So 3 questions. Distinction between visitors and local passengers, elderly people, and monthly pass. So I would invite Mr. Chow to answer that question. Thank you, member, for your question. We would go back and study whether we can separate the 2 groups of patients. Now, because of our system, there are some limitations. We have to upgrade our toll gates, and also we don't know whether we can. The system can support a distinction between the 2 groups of customers. So we have to study it. What about multiple journey discounts and monthly pass? Same answer. Like before, we have to study it. Elderly discount. Deputy Secretary. So that is in relation to the $2 concessionary fare scheme. So we would take the members' view and then study whether it is feasible. Mr. Chen Hao-fung, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chair. The application of a 100% increase of fare by the Star Ferry is actually a poison for them. To tide over a temporary economic downturn, they are choosing this toxic pill. I totally understand the plight faced by the Star Ferry, but does it have to be so much? I have reservation. A 100% fare hike would affect the revenue. From our perspective, Star Ferry is not a necessity. There are alternatives. For those who are choosing the Star Ferry, those are people with leisure, and they may be visitors.
What I'd like to ask the administration is, in the past, you did make some suggestions so that they can increase their non-fare box revenue. For example, you allow them to get reimbursement of rental and so on. Well, for piers number 1 to 7, I remember you did make a suggestion that they should build a deck whereby there can be catering and also leisure services. I think that was discussed at the Central and Western District Council, but then apparently nothing followed. So for number 1 to number 7 piers, well, outside of those piers, if you were to build an additional deck to bring in some non-fare box revenue, I think that's something that should be considered. How come it's not pressed ahead with? Have there been different considerations, or are you prepared to reconsider it? Deputy Secretary, thank you for your question. on how we can make better use of the space between the two piers in order to increase the non-fare box revenue for Star Ferry. That's indeed something that we're going to look into. And the Honourable Member just referred to a specific project. Well, yes, we will have to seriously reconsider it to see if it's feasible on the one hand, and second, it would be to make it attractive to both local and overseas visitors, and thirdly, whether or not we can do it economically. Yes, for the footbridge, in fact, it halted between pier number 2 and 3. So you were planning to have a very major deck to be built outside in order to connect it. In fact, for ferry service operators, definitely is one of the most difficult times. It's not just confined to Star Ferry. And therefore, if you're not able to increase non-fare box revenue, such discussions will be never-ending. Administration, yes, we agree. For ferry services, in fact, their operations have been very difficult. We will have to think about ways to increase their non-fare box revenue. We will have to work harder. I think the member's question was that he was aware that you had been discussing about it for quite a while, so you would have to expedite the process and then come to a decision. Next, Mr. Ben Chen. Thank you, Chairman. I can see that Star Ferry has been making a loss, and to some extent, it is finding it hard to survive. And therefore, what we don't want to see most is that it would not be able to continue to operate. And of course, we don't want to see any fare hike, but then even after this fare hike, it is still making a loss. And therefore, there is no chance that by increasing fare you'll be able to make ends meet. And of course there are bound to be negative impacts if you were to increase fares, because public's perception will be changed. So they think that is more expensive, and therefore they would be reluctant to take it, and therefore is a vicious circle. So what you have to consider is even if you were to increase fare, should it be doubled? And also for non-fare box revenue, well, the administration admitted that we've been discussing this for years, and yet the administration has not been quick enough. So you will have to work faster. Well, for piers, there are many facilities that need to be updated and renewed. For example, in Tsim Sha Tsui, it's very run down. So can you refurbish it so that the rentals can go up? So other than those passengers taking the ferry, would there be space that can add value so that they can be leased out? And Star Ferry is also a symbol, an icon. So can you do something about it? For example, can you introduce some historical elements? For example, we are promoting some heritage one-day tour. So can you make it part of the itinerary so that visitors can also take the Star Ferry during their day trip? And also for the subsidy for some of these routes, well, for our outlying islands fares, that would help. I think such subsidies should also go to Star Ferry because they are also encountering difficulties. So how come is not included? Because even for Discovery Bay and other routes, they are also included in the PTFSS. So why can't Star Ferry be included? Deputy Secretary. So how come we have not been able to help Star Ferry? And also for non-fare box revenue, we'd like to defer to Star Ferry to tell you more about this. Well, for the PTFSS is for residents from the outlying islands because those services would be necessary for them. But then for Star Ferry, it's not the case. And therefore, for raw in-harbour services, they will not be covered. That's the policy consideration. Yes, Mr. Chow? Thank you. Yes, Mr. Chen asked a couple of questions. Well, for non-fare box revenue, indeed, we need to attach more importance to it because, as he rightfully pointed out, even after the fare increase, we would not be able to make ends meet. And in terms of revitalizing the pier, we'd like to expedite the process because, as Mr. Chen said, Tsim Sha Tsui Pier has been there for 65 years. There is an urgency for us to enhance it and upgrade it because the facilities are very run down. And other than revitalizing the pier and refurbishing the whole pier, and it would take several years. So in the interim, we are also enhancing our shop mix so that more people can be attracted to take our service. And also we've been talking to different institutions so that, both at the pier and also on board of the ferries, they can also organize some events in order to make it more attractive. Next, Mr. Yu Pak Leong, 3 minutes. Yes, I fully understand that there is a need for Star Ferry to increase fare, but then doubling it would give people this impression that indeed is a bit too hefty. So doubling it would be a bit too high. And as some colleagues have said, even if you were permitted to increase fare and double it, it would still not be sustainable for you because after doubling it, does it mean that you'd be able to continue by relying solely on fare box revenue? I don't think that's the case. So the administration will have to think hard about this. For pier facilities, obviously, they can be changed or converted into a heritage trail product or heritage tour product, so that Star Ferry Pier and also the clock tower and the ferry service, the three can be combined into part and parcel of a day trip itinerary for heritage tours. I do not agree that for the commuters and also the visitors, they should be segregated. We have to become a tourist-friendly community. And if you have two fares for different types of passengers, there would be difficulties. And also, that would not look good for some of the passengers if they have to pay differently. So that's something you will have to bear in mind. Well, as an entity with over 120 years, is almost like an antique. And also, this is also part of our collective memory for so many of us. And therefore, it's time for you to position yourself as a tourist-oriented facility and service. So if the pier can be converted so that you can have more catering services, so that there can also be more commercial operations in the pier, I'm sure that would be more sustainable. Yes, Deputy Secretary. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Yu, for your questions. We fully agree that Star Ferry is not just a public transport mode. It's also very much part of our heritage. And therefore, we'll be talking to the Tourism and Culture Bureau to see what can be done about it. Well, on the fare proposal, for weekdays it's 320, and then during weekends the fare will be 420. So that would also help do this triage. So because for weekends mostly it would be visitors and non-residents who would be going or using the service. Yes, Mr. Wong. Yes, I have to say that this fare increase is inevitable because we are now in debt and there is no end, there is no light at the end of the tunnel because we are actually making a loss of $1 million every week, and therefore, yes, the public might think that they are shocked by this level of fare hike, but then we have to say that we have no alternative but to increase fares other than Tsim Sha Tsui and the Central Pier. Well, as some members have said, in Central, we've been talking to some government departments to see how we can enhance the facility because we can see that in Central, is very much underutilized right now, and to do something about it might take a bit shorter. So we hope to do something about it so that we can have an interim and also a long-term target. Next, Lo Wai-kwok, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. Well, Star Ferry's fare hike application, well, reminds me of what happened in 1966. Back then, they were only proposing to increase the first class fare by some 20 cents and then by 25 cents respectively. And then there was also another fare increase proposal by 10 cents. Still, there was very strong outcry in the community. There was even riots. So back then, Star Ferry was a very important public mode of transport because we hadn't had the Cross Harbour Tunnel yet. But now things have changed. Well, there are other public transport modes that are a lot more convenient than Star Ferry, and that's obviously the choice of most commuters. And back in 2018, Star Ferry's daily average patronage was about 53,900, and then in 2020, by 2021, it dropped by half, only about 26,220. So just looking at the fare box revenue, it was already halved. That's a big problem. And then for rental income, during the epidemic, inevitably it would also come down. So there was always this pressure to increase fare. And yet, we are still not out of the pandemic yet, and different sectors are still suffering, and many people have a hard time in their living. And therefore, this fare hike might not be acceptable to many in the community. That's imaginable. And then if you ask us, we are also in a dilemma. But I think the government is giving people the impression that whatever Star Ferry says, then they just pass it over to LegCo. So LegCo will make a decision. I think we would have to sit down to do some sensitivity tests. If you increase fare by a certain margin, then the pressure might be lowered. And there might be other alternatives because we know the nature of the business has to change. Because if you don't change, you simply will not survive. Because we can also change it into a leisure for many people. And if you're just passing the buck on to us, and we do not see where the government stands, and you do not seem to have a way out for them, so we have not been able to choose from a package of options, and you're just asking us to express our views. I think this way of consultation with this council would not be something that I'd like to see. So what's your take on this? Yes, Deputy Secretary, have you done any sensitivity tests? And have you responded to the request positively? Well, what is in hand is an application for fare increase by Star Ferry. And as you can see in the paper, well, in the last part, we believe that this level of increase is not low at all. And we will have to balance between public acceptability and other factors in determining what should be done about it. So what's the ultimate decision? So we are here to listen to your views. And as we have heard from many members, that, well, an application for fare increase by Star Ferry is justifiable, but then doubling the fare might not be good.
The government's position is similar. We do understand that the financial situation of Star Ferry do worry a fare increase, but whether it is 100%, it is still open for discussion. Now, today you are asking us to give you views, but what will the next step be? Will you offer us with an enhanced option for us to comment on? Now, the next step will be we will consult the Transport Advisory Council. To change the fare, we need to do an amendment. So we will submit the proposal to the Chief Executive in Council, and then it will be subject to a negative vetting by the Legislative Council. So I think Dr. Low means that next time you should provide us with an enhanced option to make the proposal more appealing. So after securing the support of the Transport Advisory Council and the Chief Executive in Council, then we will come up with a proposal to amend the law and put it before the Council. Mr. Chan Siu Chung, 3 minutes. I think Mr. Andrew Lam. The Deputy Secretary has said it very clearly in her opening. It is a landmark and it is a collective memory. And then it is also a means of public transport. It is a very unique kind of transport, but its function as a mainstream transport mode has been on the decrease for a long time. If you raise the fare by 100%, the attractiveness in terms of fare compared with other modes of transport would be much less. So its function as a means of public transport would be even further undermined. Pragmatically speaking, I think it would be more desirable to support Star Ferry from the perspective of cultural and sports and tourism rather than supporting it as a major means of public transport. So I think it is correct to be fair in terms of implementing a fare increase for different groups of people, but can we offer more concession or discounts to the commuters who are frequent users of ferry? Well, the technology is very advanced nowadays. I don't believe that your system would not be able to address the issue. Now, the general manager said you would go back to study it. But if you come back and tell me that after the study, you are telling me that your system cannot deal with that, I would be very surprised. General manager and deputy secretary. Yes, the members' view is noted. We don't want to affect those commuters who really rely on Star Ferry for their daily commute. We don't want to add to the burden, so we will discuss with the Star Ferry further about that. Mr. Chow, we have heard Mr. Lam's suggestions. You said with the technology nowadays it is feasible. However, there is also the financial concern. The company is still suffering a loss of $1 million every week. So the priority would still be on operation. For other investments, we would look at each item individually. At present, the fare level is too low, so there's really no room for interchange discounts with other public transport service providers. Just a follow-up. I mentioned a lot of details. I believe the administration has heard us. So we have to know how much we have to increase the fare to achieve the objectives we set. So I'm already treating the Star Ferry as a cultural and tourism project. So we should address these concerns in one go, riding on this opportunity. Thank you. I think the administration has heard you. Mr. Chow Siu Chung, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chair. The Star Ferry is the collective memory of Hong Kong people. I also agree that it is more than a transport operator. It is something that should be conserved. The financial situation is so bad. So on principle, I support the Star Ferry to adjust the fare upward reasonably. However, if you look at the revenue structure for non-fare box revenue, it accounts for over half of your revenue. Under the epidemic, the fare box revenue would be affected. So it seems that the entire effort to address the financial plight is to increase your revenue from fare box and put the burden on the passengers. So I agree some members' point that you may end up losing. After the 100% increase, you would lose your fare competitiveness, and there are other faster and cheaper means to cross the harbour. And also, you would lose your clients for advertisements, and it would affect your non-fare box revenue as well. Of course, 100% increase is nowhere acceptable. I hope you can adjust the level of increase. And also for monthly pass, you shouldn't increase the fare level, or at least not increase it so much, because for those who are buying monthly pass, it is a necessity for them. So 100% increase for monthly pass would be unacceptable. Deputy Secretary, yes, we heard the members' views. I thank Mr. Zhao for appreciating the plight faced by the Star Ferry. So in determining the final proposal, we would consider all members' views. Mr. Tony Chair, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chair. First of all, I support the Star Ferry in maintaining its quality service. However, in terms of the price increase proposal, like other members have said, this is only addressing it is not addressing the cause of the roots of the issue. Even if the price increase application is approved, is this sustainable? Now, there are fewer and fewer commuters choosing Star Ferry as a mode of transport. So the major revenue would come from visitors, because many people would see Star Ferry as a tourism attraction, even for local Hong Kongers. They would like to ride the Star Ferry to enjoy the view of the Victoria Harbour, and also go to Tsim Sha Tsui for certain activities. Now, in terms of pier property, how the government can help Star Ferry to increase the revenue stream, these are all aspects we have to consider. We are all astonished by the magnitude of the increase, but still we have to think how we can offer a comprehensive supporting package for the Star Ferry. Now, actually, looking at the previous round of a fare increase, it seems that there is a long time gap between the approval of the fare increase application and the actual implementation. For MTRCL, the implementation will be very swift. Now, the previous round of price increase application was put forward in April 2019, but in the end, it was implemented on the 9th of February 2021. Does it really require such a long time? If the time gap is shortened, then maybe then it would be more feasible and flexible, because we are talking about throwing a lifeline for the Star Ferry. So I hope the government can speed up the procedures. Deputy Secretary, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Member, for your views. We agree that we cannot solely rely on a fare hike to keep up Star Ferry's operation. So we would review how we can provide better support in terms of non-fare box revenue and government subsidies. In terms of the timetable, the previous round of application was submitted in 2019, but then many things happened, so so there was some delay. This time around, we hope we can be more efficient. Thank you very much. Now, in conclusion, I am pleased to see that the administration and the representatives of the Star Ferry Company Limited have promised to further look into the matter after listening to members' views. So the next time when you come back after the C in Council has approved your proposal, or if you have come up with another proposal, the Legislative Council will get to scrutinize your proposal again under the negative vetting mechanism. Now, members have said that they don't see optimistic a future even after the price hike. So next time around, please tell us what measures have you considered to make the situation more sustainable. So I hope that you can come back to us as soon as possible. We will be happy to help. So that's it for this item. I thank the administration and the staff area for coming. Next item, replacements of the traffic signal controllers and ancillary equipment of Hong Kong area traffic control system. Now, while the administration is coming in, I would like to make it aware to members that I would exercise my power to extend the meeting by 50 minutes. Further than that, I would seek your support if I need to extend the meeting further. So for those members who would like to speak, please press the request to speak button. We welcome the representatives of the administration. We have the PowerPoints on our table, and also we have the council brief provided by the administration, CB4974/05. We welcome the administration. May I invite the representative to walk us through the item briefly. Thank you, Chair. Today we seek members' views on the proposal replacement of traffic signal controllers and ancillary equipment of Hong Kong area traffic control system, that is ATC. Now, the ATSC was commissioned in year 2006 for monitoring and coordinating the traffic signal system on the Hong Kong Island. It includes the central computer and also 393 traffic signal controllers on Hong Kong Island. We plan to replace the aging traffic signal controllers and also connect these controllers wirelessly to the central computer. Now, after 16 years of operation, most of these controllers are aging. And also the key parts of the previous batch of controllers are obsolete, and there are fewer parts available in the market, posing difficulties for maintenance. To maintain road safety and reliability of the controlling system, we propose to replace 324 older models controllers. Now, besides two controllers which are connected to the central computer wirelessly, the other 391 controllers in the Hong Kong Island are connected through copper wires or even working independently. Now, wireless network has matured and the cost is very competitive. So we propose for all controllers which are not connected wirelessly to replace them with wireless routers and replace the copper wire connection so that the TD can more effectively remotely control and monitor all the traffic signal controllers on the Hong Kong Island.
We expect that will cost us about $145 million as non-recurrent expenditure, and with your approval, we'll be going to the FC in 2023, and if it's approved, then in the first quarter of 2023, we're going to start works, and we expect that we will be able to commission it starting from mid-2025, and they can be connected to the HKATC through a wireless system. So I'll be deferring to my colleagues to do a PowerPoint presentation. Well, because of the time constraint, I suggest that with regard to your PPT, please be more precise and concise. Please just highlight the salient points so that members will be able to have more time to ask questions and have more interaction with you. Yes, I'll quickly go through our project. Well, for the TSC, they are located at junctions of roads in order to control traffic signals so that for vehicles from different directions, they can safely and orderly use the road junctions in order to avoid accidents and reduce delays. At present, most of the TCS are connected through copper wire network and they're connected to the ATC, and our colleagues at the ATC, that is on the left-hand side, they can make use of the control system to grasp the situation in real time, and then when necessary, they can also adjust the signaling. Well, we have 4 such systems, and they're responsible for different regions and areas. Well, for the Hong Kong ATC system, is responsible for adjusting the TSCs in the Hong Kong Island. And then under the HKATC system, it comprises 2 parts. One is the central computer at the ATC, and in 2019 we upgraded that system, and it's been running smoothly since then. And the second part is located at different road junctions, and they comprise the TSCs. And right now we have 393 such TSCs, and out of those, 324 were already commissioned before 2006, and they've been in operation for more than 16 years, and they've been running for over 140,000 hours. So for these old TSCs, they are posing 3 challenges to us. Number 1, because they've been operating for 16 years, and some of them are already aging, and the fault rate has increased. And secondly, well, they are the old model for more than 16 years, and therefore some of them can no longer be replaced. And therefore, as a result of that, replacing and repairing them would be very difficult. And thirdly, because most of them still rely on copper wire underground to be connected to the central system, and once such a copper wire network is at fault, it would take longer for us to locate where they are and then carry out repair works. And also for such a copper wire network, they are now being replaced by many modern devices like wireless devices, and therefore the repair cost would also be very high. And also the reliable operation of traffic signals would be critical to maintaining road safety and traffic efficiency, and therefore with this aging situation, we propose to replace those obsolete TSCs, and we are mainly targeting the copper wire devices. We'd like to use routers so that we can comprehensively use a wireless system to connect with the ATC. So this is for your consideration. So these are the locations of the different TCS, and the red dots represent where they are, and the red dots are the obsolete TSC, 324 in total, and for the blue ones, they are the modernized ones. We have 69 of them. And on the right-hand side, you can see that for the modernized systems and what they consist of. In order to ensure that we can make use of the wireless network so that they can be connected to our central system, we would be procuring routers to replace the copper wire network. So on the right-hand side, you can see how they are connected with the routers. So it's like a telecommunication lines. So the old ones the left-hand side would be the copper wire network, and then on the right-hand side you can see that the green ones would be a wireless spare part for the routers, and then we also have the antenna for 4G routers and also the industrial-grade 4G routers. Well, earlier on we conducted an on-site test, and we made a comparison. We found out that for the copper wire network, when compared to the modern ones, in terms of system performance and stability, the new ones would do a lot better. And therefore, upon completion of this, all the TSCs will be equipped with wireless connection. And then for those who have to be replaced, and yet we have not been able to connect it with the existing system, then we would also be connecting them with the 4G routers. Well, this layout plan shows you how the central system is working. Well, for the orange dots, they are the copper wired network. So there are a total of 368. And then in the green dots, they are the pilot schemes. And we are testing with the wireless system. And they are located in Causeway Bay and also in Lai Tak Chuen or Lai Tak Estate Road. And for the two, and there are also 23 that are operating independently. And they're working independently with pre-planned systems. So this is how the 393 TSCs are running. And we propose that we'd spend $145 million new commitment to replace the 324 obsolete TSCs. And we would also be procuring some routers or 368 routers so that even for those that are operated independently now, they can then be connected to the central system. Next, I'll move on to how we plan to replace them. Can you speed up a bit? Okay, let's focus on the pavements. Well, to see whether or not it's complicated, it would take about 2 to 4 hours for us to complete that. And then in the interim, the existing traffic signals will cease operation, but then we'll arrange for traffic warden or traffic police to direct the traffic. And if the situation is complicated, then we may have to carry out some excavation works, but then we will come up with a very comprehensive plan to do it, so that the transport department and the police would also give advice to ensure that the impact on the traffic will be minimized. And then upon completion of the project, we expect that the TSCs on Hong Kong Island will be running smoothly, and they would become more reliable, and there would be fewer breakdowns, and there would also be better safeguards so as to ensure reliability of the system, and that would also lower the difficulty in terms of repair and maintenance. And also, we can also use a wireless network to connect all the 393 TSCs, and therefore, in terms of control and monitoring of the entire traffic system on the Hong Kong Island, it can become more effective, and that would also help us ease traffic congestions at different junctions. And the estimate is about $145 million, and out of that, $114.9 million would be for the procurement and replacement of these TSCs, and they can also be connected wirelessly. We would also have to carry out tests to check how it works, and also $17.5 million would be for engaging consultants. They would be doing the detailed design, and they would also be involved in the planning. And also, they would also help us prepare the tendering documents and so on, and also contract management, supervision, and also they would also carry out the acceptance test for us after the completion of works. And then for the $13.24 million is contingency fee, because that would constitute about 10% of the total cost estimate. Lastly, is about the implementation plan with the approval from the FC. We expect that in the first quarter of 2023, would be starting the works. We would be engaging the consultant to carry out site visits and also to do the tendering. The entire replacement works will press ahead full steam. And then for those with wireless routers, after the testing, starting from mid-2025, they would gradually replace the existing system and be connected to the HKATC. We expect that before 2027 would be able to have it fully commissioned. Thank you. Okay, for those who would like to speak, there are 5. So I'll read out their names: Lo Wai Kwok, Chan Hock Fong, Chen Hang Pen, Andrew Lam, and then Tony Chia. We have less than 20 minutes, and if you don't mind, so every one of you will be given 3 minutes. First, Lo Wai Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. Well, the administration is proposing to replace the TSCs under the ATC system and also the routers and so on. Of course, we have to support it. There is no way that we would say no to this. But then I am surprised that you're actually going back in time, because other than replacing these TSCs, you're actually proposing to procure routers so that they can be connected wirelessly to the HKATC. And you have 393 such TSCs, other than 2 that have been connected wirelessly to the ATC via routers and also the central computers. For the rest, they still use the copper wire network to connect with the central system without any wireless devices and so on. We are talking about smart cities. We are talking about electronic governance. And still, they are so backward. So I am really shocked. How can you compete with others? A few years ago, lawmakers went to the Yangtze River Delta, and they went to Hangzhou to look at how they did their work. You can see how advanced they were. And now, looking at this paper, you are still having copper wire connected devices and so on. I'm speechless. I am simply lost for words. So I'm afraid government officials will not be able to answer the question, well, when can we really do as well as our counterparts on the mainland? Ms. Lee, thank you, Dr. Low, for your question. In fact, in terms of smart traffic and smart transportation, we have been working very hard on that already. Well, as you said, the system started 16 years ago, and gradually we are going to replace them with smart devices so that the Transport Department will be able to do a more efficient job. So I wonder if the Transport Department would like to supplement. Anything from the Transport Department? Thank you, Dr. Low. Well, technology will have to meet our needs. Our TSE and also our central computer systems communication. Well, the load of information would be very low. That's the reason why we have always thought that they have been able to meet our needs. And a few years ago, when we looked at the feasibility of using more advanced technology like optic fiber, then that would greatly exceed our needs. And also the telecommunication companies, if they were to lay optic fibers to all the 300 plus locations and also the over 1,000 junctions, the cost would be tremendous. So we are taking advantage of the 4G and 5G technology, and to do it wirelessly would enable us to save a lot of cost. I think I've already overrun on my time. Well, for wireless routers, they were invented more than 30 years ago, and it was widely used elsewhere. So I'm lost for words, really. Okay, next, Mr. Chen Hock-Fong, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. I think this suggestion, well, in my words, would be something that we find it hard to deny, because you have to update your system, and yet you're proposing to use a relatively backward system. So you would only be able to commission the whole system by the fourth quarter of 2027. So 5 more years to go. And looking at your PowerPoint, you are still using 4G. And there is no artificial intelligence at all. So what's the point of replacing it? Because the old system is still working. So why don't you just stick to the old ones? And why are you not replacing it with the state-of-the-art technology? Because as Dr. Low Wai-chuen said, well, if you don't even have AI, then what's the point of replacing it? So I hope that the department will think hard about this. Well, if you were to replace it, why don't you use AI as well, so that so that it will be able to adapt to the busiest traffic situation in Hong Kong? Because on the one hand, we have traffic congestion, and yet there are road junctions that are not used at all.
And you said wireless network is very safe and secured. However, there are hackers everywhere. How can you ensure the security? What if a hacker hacks into the traffic signaling system? That is something that I am worried about. And why don't you use 5G? You said 4G and 5G, but on the paper it just says 4G. So which generation of network it is? So why 4G but not 5G? And why not we have AI in the signaling system? Thank you. I will answer the question first, and then we'll defer to the Commissioner. So it really depends on the need when choosing the technology, and also whether there can be an AI system for coordinating the real-time traffic signal. Well, actually, this replacement exercise, the purpose is to allow the TD to more effectively monitor the traffic signaling system. So in terms of the security of a network and whether hackers can hack into it, I would defer to the transport department as well. So I have to emphasize we don't want just human beings to control the monitor the system. We want an AI to control the system. Well, whether we choose 4G or 5G as a means of connection, it depends on the strength of the signal. If the signal is strong enough, we would use 5G. And also, we have conducted a security assessment. We even have a drill hacking attempts by internet security experts. So we do have a firewall, and we have a dedicated channel of communication, and all data would be encrypted. In terms of artificial intelligence, we are implementing another project which will make use of AI on a trial basis. Very soon, we will come back to electrical to consult members on using sensors equipped with AI at junctions and to collect information on pedestrian and vehicular flow. Mr. Ben Chen, 3 minutes. It really is a journey back in time. Having read the paper, my feeling is that we are trying to turn copper wire into wireless, and then this is a giant step. Well, but it is nowhere near smart. So is it already part of the smart city blueprint, or will you come back for more funding when you have to update the TSC further? So is it already a smart transport drive? Well, there will be another item for that. Thank you. So this has nothing to do with smart transport. Well, then I would think the $100 million not worth it. You said it would be very difficult to replace the damaged copper wire because they are obsolete. Well, I can tell you they are still here. And also 4G and 5G signals would be easier for people to block it with a GSM system. So we would make the road safety of the Hong Kong Island better or worse. Well, you can buy a GSM device in Shenzhen at a very cheap price. Well, if you are adopting wireless communication protocols used by the public, then are you improving or are you undermining the security of the traffic signal system? Mr. Law? Thank you. Like Mr. Chen said, copper wire network is still very popular, and it is used by other places as well. We have conducted a test, as I said. The security and the performance level are acceptable. And also, in case of a disconnection between the TSCs and the central computer, the TSC can still continue to operate, albeit independently. So we also have protocols to deal with these disruptions. Chair, I think this proposal should not be given funding at this stage. Well, actually, the TSCs are operating normally over the past 10 years. It seems that the government is coming back for funding of at the amount of $1 billion every 10 years for patchwork updates. So I tend not to support this proposal. I want more clarifications and explanations from the government on how the technology is developing before we support the proposal. So I think the administration has heard you. Next, Mr. Andrew Lam, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Very briefly, I would like to echo the previous members' comments in ditto. So I think this proposal is not very meaningful. I hope the administration can tell us for the next step if we want to achieve a smart traffic control under the smart city drive. Can we upgrade our system a relatively simple manner to get there? Or do you have to come back and get more funding to revamp the system again? It seems as there is no sustainability of the new system. So if that's the case, I will have a very hard time supporting the proposal. Will the administration please reply? Mr. Low. We really need to update our traffic signal controllers to achieve smart traffic control. Without wireless routers, we cannot connect our sensors with the routers to further implement our smart traffic lamp system. Of course, we will continue our efforts in promoting smart traffic lamps. However, the TSCs are aging, and the default rate is getting higher. It is simply the fact that the default rate will continue to rise. Mr. Lam? Well, to put my ideas more accurately, if you are saying this is the first step, then what about the timetable for the next step? And when you are taking this first step, we would lay a foundation for the second step, or is it totally unrelated to the next step? So we would lay a foundation for the next stage. Like we said, we do intend to come back to the electrical in the near future on the promotion of the real-time traffic control system, or in layman words, smart traffic system. This replacement will lay a foundation for that project. Without this step, there is no way we can take the next step. We are preparing the proposal right now, and we will come back to electrical on how to promote the smart traffic lamp system. Well, but the member said it would have a bearing on whether he supports your proposal, whether you have a comprehensive plan. Well, this is part of the comprehensive plan. Okay, Mr. Tony TSE, 3 minutes. Chair. Other members have put forward the views. So from what the paper has said and what the government has replied, our questions are not answered. You are asking for $100 million. And there will also be smart devices to assess the pedestrian and vehicular flow on the road. But you haven't given us any information on that. Well, you said you couldn't take the next step without our support for this proposal. But we are worried that for the next step, there will be more adjustments and more funding asked. So it seems that you are asking for funding in a very scattered manner. And I really have doubt whether you are spending public money wisely. So like many members said, with the amount of information given to us, there is no way we can support your funding proposal. Paragraph 12 of the paper, you mentioned that there will be $1.1 million saved in terms of maintenance per year. So is that justified? Thank you. Paragraph 12. That is a $1.1 million saving in terms of recurrence cost. With copper wire, the recurrence cost of maintenance is free or close to $4 million per year. After switching to wireless routers, the recurrent cost per year would be lowered to $3 million. So that is the yearly saving in terms of recurrent expenditure, $1.1 million. Now, because of the age of the TSCs, there will be more default rates would go up. You said that the yearly maintenance cost is $4 million per year. So is that a latest figure, or is that an average over the past 16 years? That would be the most updated figure compared with the expected savings by switching to wireless router. Chair, I don't think the explanation is very clear. So let's say you have switched copper wires to wireless routers. Now, with the aging devices, I don't think you are saving the maintenance costs at all. So the government seems to have a grand plan, but they are telling us the plan in pieces. And they are telling us that they can't take the next step forward if we don't approve at this step. So I reiterate my objection to this funding proposal. I think the administration has heard our members' clear views. So you are trying to replace the aged devices. Of course, money has to be spent, but whether they are spent wisely and whether they will get you what you want, it seems that there is a lack of a comprehensive plan. You said this is part of the real-time traffic control system, but we only have a segment of the full picture, and we don't know the full picture. So if the government intends to apply for funding with the FC, well, we are telling you now as the panel stage that we need more analysis and the comprehensive plan before we can give you our support. Any reply? Thank you, Chair. We will go back and come up and compile supplementary information so that members can understand our comprehensive plan more clearly, and also the benefits and the future of the future measures. So this is the end for this item. Thank you. AOB members, please note that the president, the chairman of this panel will, in the capacity of the chair of the panel on transport, submit a report on behalf of the panel at the council meeting on the 14th of December to report to the council our deliberation work for this legislative session. If there are no other views, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.